It is a very special GAA embedded this Thursday night because it is All-Ireland Final weekend. Will Limerick win the 3 out of 4 and go on to be the dominant team that they look like being? Or will it be Cork's time? Will the summer of Cork come from nowhere, as they so often do? Here to talk to us about it is Shane McGrath, our regular guest, former All-Ireland winner with Tipperary, and the great John Mullane from Waterford. Thanks a million for joining us, lads. We've a lot to talk about. We're also going to speak to Tommy Walsh a little bit later on. I spoke to Tommy yesterday about the Electric Ireland minor final and also about the senior final. So we'll hear from another of the greats of the game in a few minutes. But Shane, before we get into it, GA man is going to the game there. He is so lucky, as are the two of you. I'm not, unfortunately. But before we get into the All-Ireland final, since we last spoke, there's been a couple of big moves in Tipperary. Not all of them completely unexpected. Liam Sheedy stepped away, and the great Brendan Maher retired. And I think it is appropriate that we kind of talk about Brendan. We did a special show when Joe Canning retired, and he's another great of the game, really. And I suppose my thought on it is a lot of people we wrote a piece about him when he came back from recruitment in 2019 and walked onto the All-Star team, which is such an achievement as like a 30-year-old in itself. And I always think of his performance I've mentioned to you before alongside you in midfield in the 2010 All-Ireland final, where for such a young man, he just took such a leadership role. He was fantastic. But I suppose more than any performances or anything like that, it seems to me the way Tip players talk about Brendan Maher was that he was just such an inspiration to everybody, even from such a young man, all the way through his career. Yeah,
absolutely, Mick. Everything you said is bang on, and I suppose, like Joe had the pressure above in Galway to play, maybe from when he was maybe 14 or 15, everybody expected Joe to play for Galway. It'd be the same in Tip, to be honest. Brendan would have played one of his first matches for Borrisoleigh when he was 15, going 16 in a North final. Now, a North divisional thing in Tip is a massive thing, and a lot of people outside mightn't understand that, but a North final, you'd have thousands of people at it, And 15 going 16 got man of the match that day. And I think from that day on, everybody expected Brendan, just expected him that he was going to play for Tip. It wasn't a matter of, if he's going to play for Tip, it was a matter of when he's going to play for Tip. And that kind of pressure can get to some people, but not Brendan. Suited him down to the ground, went on then, won a minor as a captain, and a senior as a captain. You're good at the stats there now, Mick. I think the last man to do it before him was Brian Cody. Could be wrong now, but I think he had, captain minor and senior All-Ireland winning team. So some achievement. He's every box ticked, listening to people talking about him during the week. Some people saying, maybe we didn't see that kind of maybe those crazy things he did with Borrisoleigh, like scoring with half a hurley or, flicking the ball out of the sky, and especially on the run they went there a couple of years ago to club. But I seen him doing those things with Tip day in, day out. I thought in 2010, Larry got hurler of the year and deservedly so. But tell you, Brendan was fair close to being young hurler and overall hurler of the year. I was playing midfield with him. He was phenomenal, in every game. And he's just the ultimate professional, I suppose. There'll be a lot said about him. He'll go down as one of the greats, rightly so. How would I describe his professionalism, I suppose, quickly? I'd say I was living with Brendan for a while there in Limerick in 2013, and I had probably the worst year I ever had with Tip. I was captain and everything, just contemplating giving it all up, really. It wasn't going well. Moved in with Brendan, and just the way he trained and the way that I would have gone training with him then, the gym, things we ate. I went to put ketchup on something one evening and he said, no ketchup, we're not having ketchup. And I was like, Jesus, what's this fella? And then the following year had probably one of the most enjoyable years hurling I ever had a Tip in 2014. And a lot of it was down to the work I would have done with Brendan away from the group. And that'll just tell you the professionalism of him. And top guy, and will, as I said, Mick, will go down as one of the greats of Tipperary hurling and modern day hurling as well, and rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. John, you would have come up against Brendan Maher and all those Tip lads, that are with Liam Sheedy stepping aside as well. It does feel like we're coming to the end of an era with Tip in a way. Obviously, not everybody is going to step aside, but there were some servants to the game over the last kind of 10, 15 years, weren't they?
Oh, unbelievable. Serious team. And I first came across Brendan Maher in 2009. I think he made his debut that year. We were after beating Tipperary in the All-Ireland semi-final the previous year. We probably had a bit of an Indian sign over Tipperary back then. But then the likes of Brendan Maher came on the scene, Pádraig Maher, Seamus Callan, Noel McGrath, that group that came through, that won the minor All-Irelands in the mid-noughties, and they just transformed Tipperary. And we seen it then in 2010. They stopped Kilkenny from doing the 5 in a row, and with Kilkenny, the two of them were probably the best two teams of the last decade. But for me, Brendan Maher, if I was to pick one player out of that incredible Tipperary team, it would be Brendan Maher. And as Shane, highlighted there, a top bloke, a really, really, really nice guy. I remember he asked me up one year to present medals up to Borrisolee with a great night up there. But the sign of a great player is a lad that will do for both county and club. He loves Borrisolee, and we've seen it there 2 years ago how dominant he was for Borrisolee. He drove them on to an All-Ireland club final. He's going to be sorely missed. I think he's 31, 32 years of age.
Yeah.
Possibly could hold on for another year or two. But I think, a bit like Joe Cannon, some of these lads, I think he's better off getting out at the top of his game. And look, there's no better time for Brendan Maher to go. He owes Tipperary hurling absolutely nothing. He's been Mr. Consistent over the course of the last 10, 12 years. And, to come back from that crucial injury and to go back up the steps, to climb the steps of the Hogan stand then in 2019, as Shane touched on it there, you could go on for another 15, 20 minutes and speak about Brendan Maher, just a top player. And as Shane alluded to there, will go down as one of the greats of Tipperary hurling. But I can't repeat myself. He's just, one of those really nice guys within the GAA that you'd love to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned with Borrisolee, like as you said, Shane, when we talked about Joe, he's not dead. He'll still be hurling for the club.
Yeah.
That's very good club team as well. Lads, John, you mentioned 08 and 09 there, and it's funny because I wanted to talk to you about kind of your first All-Ireland final experiences, and it is it's some week, because I was given out on Monday show actually that we're probably not feeling enough like an All-Ireland week even at that stage, but the more it goes into it, having the under-20 final last night, you're starting to get the fever of it. We're starting to feel like it is All-Ireland week. There's going to be a big crowd in Croke Park. It's not 80,000, but it's still great. Both of you guys are going there. You're going to be there with RT Radio, so there's a buzz there when you're a player. And I think it's funny because you're from two very different types of counties. John, you're kind of from you're from a county that doesn't always get there, and it was a really big deal but Shane, then also you weren't there in a while, when you got there in 09, and there's an extra pressure when you're from somewhere like Tipperary. So I feel like it's the same kind of mentality, John, of like coming up on the Wednesday or Thursday, how you almost keep your focus on the match itself and not get swept away when we're having these kind of shows and the local paper has a 40-page pullout and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I suppose for us in 08, probably the team was probably coming to the end. It talks the likes of the Kens, the Dan Shanahans, the Paul Flynn's, players who soldiered for Waterford for the best part of 10 to 12 years. And probably from our point of view, we probably got to the All-Ireland, from when our team was possibly coming to the end, rather than probably if we got to the All-Ireland probably in 02, 03, it probably would have stood to us more going forward in the last decade. And I suppose there's probably similarities from ourselves and even Shane's team in 2009 with Cork that, particularly with Shane's team, because for a lot of these Cork players, they're going into this All-Ireland, they're probably free in their own mindset because, you touched on it there, but the success of the Cork under-20s, they've a serious minor team who are going to be playing against Saturday. So for a lot of these young Cork players who are going into Sunday's final, a bit like Shane's team in 2009, are probably going to be free within themselves, albeit they're going to be coming up against a formidable opponent in Limerick, like our situation and Shane's situation back in 2009, where Kilkenny were chasing 3 in a row and 4 in a row, and Limerick are chasing their own bit of history the weekend. But for a lot of those Cork players, they're going into Sunday's game knowing that, you know what, lads, we'll give it one hell of a shot and see where it takes us. Knowing that there's a strong possibility, Mick, that the likelihood is that they're going to be back next year. They possibly could be back the following year. I think within the next decade, I think the likelihood is Cork will be in the vast majority of the finals. So I think it's, for a lot of those young lads, they'll be saying, well, you know what, I'm not going to even say it's not the end of the world in losing an All-Ireland final. It is the end of the world in losing an All-Ireland final. All-Ireland finals are there for winning. But you know where I'm coming from? Sometimes when you're an awful lot younger, you're saying to yourself, well, you know what, we can just go out, have a right crack at this. In contrast to probably Hoggy or probably Seamus Harnedy, who are probably going out, probably putting more pressure on themselves, like so probably Kane or probably Paul Flynn or Dan Shannon, saying, well, look, lads, we might be back here again. So you kind of, that weight of expectation, kind of, you're kind of lifting that more going into a final. Like the likes of Hoggy, who will be saying to themselves, well, look, this might be my last opportunity or second last opportunity of winning an All-Ireland. So, and even Seamus Harnedy, so they might put more pressure on themselves in contrast to the younger lads who will be saying, well, look, and even when you're young, you're saying, you're more freer. You go out and say, look, Jesus, what'll be, will be. And I always find that even from club level that, young lads going into a county final, they don't really care. And that was, we've seen that with Limerick in 2018. Really young team. Everyone was predicting Galway, and Limerick went in, free in their own mindsets, and they went out and they just had it go, and they won the All-Ireland. Clare something similar in 2013. So I think I think for an awful lot of these young Cork players going into Sunday's final, I think it's an ideal situation. And as Dermot O'Sullivan touched on last week, a lot of these players are carrying no baggage.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, Shane, because I'd be interested to know, like, there is also as John said, it is there to be won. Like, you think in 2013, we thought Clare would be back a couple of times and it never happened, but at the same time, like, when you went in 2009, it was a very similar situation to Cork in that you'd had good games with Kilkenny, you'd had that brilliant league final with them, but the rest of the country all had the Limerick final, the Waterford final, the 4 in a row in your head, and maybe Tip were a little bit under the radar. And I'm just wondering, did you feel freer in 2009 than you did, say, in 10, 11, 14, when you knew what an All-Ireland final experience was?
Yeah, I probably did personally. I suppose 2009 was the first time I would have played in an absolutely full Croke Park, and just the buzz of that when you came out for the warm-up and everything. And maybe not as much pressure as you said, but I suppose internally in our group, we were in the place. We were after winning the league in 2008. We had won 2 Munster finals, 2008 and 2009, and we were in a good place internally, I suppose, and we felt that we could put it up to Kilkenny. And I suppose a lot of the few of the Kilkenny lads were kind of maybe like John's team, maybe coming towards the end. I was marking Derek Ling that day for about 45 minutes, and then this young lad from Ballyhale called Michael Fennelly came on, and midfield changed forever, really. And that was I suppose that was the kind of way they were. I thought, not to talk about the past too much, but I thought 2009 was actually the best game of hurling I've ever been involved in personally, and a lot of people maybe say 10 or 14 from the finals we played, but for being involved in, I thought 2009 was just ferocious, that the hurling that went on and everything. But I think John has made a great point there about the Cork lads. A lot of them will come up, there is a Corkness about the group, there is a confidence about the group, as people were saying, they waited 15, 16 years to win All-Ireland, and now they're after winning 2 in a few weeks, and maybe going to win another win on Sunday. So I think there'll be that self-confidence there. But I think the Pat Horgan thing, the Harnedy thing, I think it's massive for them. I think the whole country would love to see Patrick Horgan win an All-Ireland. But I suppose in life you don't get what you deserve, you get what you take, and you have to take that. They have to take their chance now Sunday, and this could very well be his last chance. And going back through the years, I always remember Niall Gilligan saying about 97 that I think he was only 19. He thought they'd be in it every year, and look at the way the career goes. And like 2013, lads, only feels like yesterday for us maybe, but I mean it is 9 seasons ago now, and it mightn't come. It just mightn't come around again, you know. But I just think they will go up with a freedom and everything, and I think internally they will believe that they are good enough to win this game and to win the All-Ireland final. And you have to love the confidence that they'll come up with, you know, up against maybe the greatest hurling team Limerick have ever produced, in my opinion, and maybe the going very close. John, we were up there last year at the All-Ireland final, and I suppose we remember talking to Tommy Welsh, and we said, Tommy said, you said to Tommy, do you think these can be as good as you were? And Tommy goes, I think they're going the right way about it, like, you know. And if Tommy is saying that, and just the setup they have, I think they are on the right road, like. And if they do win Sunday, I think we will be talking about this Limerick team in years to come, maybe in the same vein as we talk about that Kilkenny team of Tommy's Kilkenny team, like.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're it's funny because I was going to say to you, the Cork being in the final now, it's funny. It's the sixth team to be represented in the final in the last 5 years. I think that's very good going for hurling, but you are getting to the stage where if Limerick win handily again, which they have ultimately in every match so far this year and definitely did in the All-Ireland final last year, you're getting into a kind of a dominant team, whereas it might feel competitive that there's 6 teams in 5 years. But if Limerick are winning it nearly every year, it's getting to the stage where, look, they're there to be enjoyed in their own way, but we do need a competitive final. We need to know that they're actually beatable, and that even if Limerick end up winning, I think we could all do with this being a close game, John.
Yeah, 100%. But I think Cork, a bit like Shane's team in 2009. You go back to 2009 when Tipperary played Kilkenny in the first league game. I think it was down in Nolan Park, wasn't Shane? Remember, I think Kilkenny blitzed you, and then you came back in the league final, and that was a humdinger of a league final. Yeah. And there's probably similarities there this year. Limerick blitzed Cork in the league meeting down in the Gaelic grounds, and then in the Munster semi-final, I think Cork were very, very unlucky that day. The 2 goals before half time effectively were the difference that day. And look, I watched back that game today. The 2 goals after the first goal, I think Hoggy had a free to bring it back to 2 points. He missed it. They went up. They got another goal, and I think Tim O'Mahony had another opportunity from sideline cut to close the gap, and they just kept Cork at arm's length. And I think Cork had a couple of opportunities in that second half to close the gap, to bring the margin back to possibly 2 or 3 points. But I think Cork are growing as this championship is going on, and I think they have momentum with them. There's a feel good factor down in Cork. Confidence is growing, and I think Cork are in a much greater place going into this final and this meeting against Limerick than they were possibly 5-6 weeks ago, going into the Munster semi-final meeting. So I think this game is going to be a lot closer than many people are suggesting the scoreline is going to be.
Yeah, Shane, that game is interesting to think back on because, as John said, there was a few things kind of went against Cork that day, and they do seem like a better team. But I watched it back as well, and I think you mentioned to me on the show when we were talking after it, like, Cork won the hooks in the blocks battle that day. They had a number of wides. Pat Horgan wasn't on form. I don't think he scored from play. He missed a few frees. That's not going to happen again. And you look at something like, Sean O'Donoghue, like, completely marking Aaron Gillane out of the game. There was enough for Limerick. There was enough for Cork to kind of think there's improvement here, and maybe this is a blueprint. And then you think we published an interview we did with Patrick Horgan back in February, yesterday again, where he talked just the season in general, but was specifically saying we're a lot closer to Limerick than people think we are. We just need the consistency. We've given them more problems than anybody else. And I thought it was a really interesting thing just finding those old quotes, because Cork always believe, but there's definitely something specific about Limerick, and we saw enough of it in the Munster semi-final to know that they can just get a bit more out of themselves.
Yeah, and I think, personally, I think a lot of Limerick people, when they seen Adrian Mullane hang the ball up in the back of the net and they knew it was going to extra time, they probably felt, right, we're probably only playing Kilkenny here, like, because, maybe Cork mightn't be able, might exercise the ghosts of extra time from 2018, or maybe there's still that softness there with the group. But I think Cork have proven time and time again this year there is a steel, there is a hardiness in this group mentally and and physically, and and they have the hurlers, then the speed to back it up, that whatever challenge you want to throw them, they have fairly answered the question this year. So I think a lot of Limerick people would be happier if Kilkenny were in the final personally. And why? Because as you said there, Mick, and as John will know, Limerick just fear Cork. Because they know of all the teams that are there, regardless of what has gone before, the Cork, that they can beat Limerick. Like a lot of other teams can't beat Limerick, and the match might be over before the ball is even thrown in. Just the level Limerick are at right now. But there is not that fear with Cork, and not with the current Cork group or anything. And they'll look back at the match in Simple Stadium from the championship and say, look, if Hoggy had scored the penalty and we go 5-6 points up, if a few other things went their way, Hoggy didn't have a good day that day, didn't score from play, didn't score in the last quarter. In the last quarter as well, I think they had 5 wides. They couldn't get it back to 3 points, and they'll look at all those things and say, lads, we're very, very close to it, And I suppose the flip side for Limerick, that Limerick will look at it and go, look, lads, we weren't good enough that day. Do you know what I mean? No score from play from Alan Gillan, no score from play from Tom Morris. Tom Morris, who what did he score from play the last day? I have it here. He scored 5 points from play the last day from wing forward. And I just think, that both sides will look at the game to say that they have massive areas.
Yeah. We just lost Shane there, but massive areas to improve for both teams, I think. But it's one I can't wait for, obviously, and there's lots to look back on from the previous game. But John and Shane, stay with me for a minute, because I want to get to our interview with Tommy Walsh that we mentioned. Electric Ireland have teamed up with the former Kilkenny minor hurler as well as senior Tommy Walsh to highlight the major impact of the minor championship and to look ahead to this week's Electric Ireland minor All-Ireland Hurling Championship final between Cork and Galway, which takes place at 7:30 on Saturday the 21st of August in Thurles in Semple Stadium. The game will be live on TG Carr with coverage beginning at 7. We did talk to Tommy about the senior final as well, which he's stand by for, but just wanted to talk to him about the minors first, because it is an interesting game. Galway are going for 5 in a row, believe it or not, which is an unbelievable feat in itself, but all the talk seems to be about Cork. See what they're up against to win that 5 in a row, though. This is it's the summer of Cork, it feels like. We'll see. They're in the under-20 final tonight. Obviously, they're in the senior final. We'll talk about that on Sunday, but they've been electric all the way through, pardon the pun. But, there's a lot of talk about Clare after that 40-point win in the first round, but someone had to do that to them. And then when you see them beating Limerick by 10 points, beating Waterford by 11, this is a dominant team and something to get really excited about as well, isn't it?
They are, and they've shown that since under 14 at Tony Forrest. That's the big under 14 competition, and it's the big All-Ireland, say, when you're at that age, and they're the champions of that. They went on the year after, they won the under 15 A and B competition. I don't think there was an under 16 competition. So this team has been coming a while. The one thing you'd always question then with young players is, can they stay improving? Can they live up to their expectations? And we've seen what they've done to Clare and in the previous 2 matches as well. Like even Jack Lahey has scored 3-9, 114 and 11 points. Like incredible scoring for a forward. And the full back got man of the match the last day, so in the Munster final. So this Cork team, I think the confidence they're getting from Rebel Oak, they're putting huge work into it. You see the likes of Don Logue, Tom Kenny, Sean Oak, Wayne Sherlock, Niall McCarthy, all putting their efforts and their work ethic into the underage setup in Cork. When you've that going in, there's always going to be a bright future, especially they're such a hurling mad county, a sports mad county. I think probably what set the ball rolling for him was the under-20 victory against Dublin, Nolan Park at the start of the summer. Because even though they were getting to the finals, they were getting beaten. They have been in minor finals, they have been in under-20 finals last couple of years, but beaten in them. So can they produce it on the big day? Suddenly they win that final against Dublin. Now there's nobody talking about that anymore. So I think it was a major one for them.
Yeah, and when you think of what might happen Saturday night, what might happen tonight in the under-20s, if they do get over the line, and obviously this is an exciting team and there'll be stars of the future to pick out from when people watch it on TG Carter on Saturday night. But leading into Sunday then, you've got this, it's just such an interesting matchup, because you've got this sense that Limerick are borderline unbeatable if they're at their best, and how can you do it? But it's like if everybody looks at the tactic side of things and think it's Limerick, but then you're almost afraid to write off Cork, not necessarily because of their form, which has been fantastic and improving, but it's because it's Cork, isn't it? It's because it's like the Corkness and all this kind of thing, is that you don't know. They could do it. They could come up the way they did to Galway in 1990, the way they did it in the past to other teams, that they could just show up and do it on the day.
Yeah, you're dead right, Mick. They have history with coming with young teams with nothing expected of them at the start of the year and returning with the Liam McCarthy back to Leeside. We've our own personal experience of it in 1999. After being beaten in the 98 final, came up against the young Cork team, and Kilkenny would have been the hot favourites. And Don Logue, Sean Og, Ben O'Connor, produced a marvellous performance on the day. It was a wet day, a real wet day, low scoring game, and they just showed to the country, to the GAA world, Cork, we're afraid of no one, and we'll always be, if we're in a final, we'll always have a chance. And that's what it feels like coming again. They started off, nobody really would have given them a chance, I think, at the start of the year. I gave a top three, and they weren't in it. I think I had Kilkenny, Galway, and Limerick. And Cork, they were probably outside of that. Where I felt Cork wouldn't be contenders was their work rate of their forwards. But we saw all year that's after changing. In the semi-final especially, the amount of hooks, blocks, last-minute tackles they got in against Kilkenny, they stopped a few certain goals with TJ, with Walter, Owen Cody, Mark Coleman, tearing back just to help out his full back line. Because, Mick, you have to remember, teams that win play as a team. That's both in the forwards and the backs. In the backs now, you're not just marking your own man. You're looking out for the lad beside you, the lad in the full back line, the lad out midfield. In the forwards, they're not letting the ball go in quick into their back line. They're hooking, they're blocking. So I think when they don't have the ball, this Cork team are really after changing or improving this year. And let alone for the goals, like Jack O'Connor, fastest player probably in the GAA at the moment. They're scoring goals, and they wouldn't have probably won that semi-final without that great Jack O'Connor goal. So what's given Cork, I think, and given the excitement to the GAA, probably neutrals, is Cork are coming with the unknown. They're not going to come and try and take them on physically, this Limerick team, because you're at nothing. They're too big. They're going to take them on through a different angle, speed and space, and a lightning razor first touch.
Yeah. And will it be enough? Like, I mean, it's such a simple question, but at the same time, just watching the second half of the Munster final and watching the way Limerick just held off, Waterford in the semi-final, it just feels like they're just at a level above everybody else. And we don't know until we see it on Sunday, but it is hard to see past them, isn't it?
Yeah, you see, they deserve the respect of us all. Any hurling follower has been looking at them. They've been dealing with setbacks, both personally and on the field. Munster final is the first case in point on the field. Tipperary out-hurled them. It wasn't that Limerick didn't show it up. It was just Tipperary did not allow them to hurl. They had Bubbles and Jason Ford popping up with goals and points all over the field. And it was just through tactics and work rate. And you were wondering, Limerick, there's no comeback from here. No way. Suddenly they came out within 10 minutes. They had them pegged back, put in one of the greatest quarters in hurling history, I'd say, in that Munster final. So that's what scares people, I think, about Limerick, is that they looked so beaten and a beaten docket that day at half time to turn it around and win so convincingly. They didn't just win it with a last minute point or goal. They had it won within a quarter. So I think that's what makes it scary for everybody else. But as I said, I think, go back to the Munster semi-final, although they beat Cork by 8 points, it was a draw match on the 35th minute, and Limerick scored 2 goals before half time. And that's not easy to come back out from, especially when you're playing the champions. You have them, you're going in with confidence into half time. Suddenly they score 2 goals, and it's a whole different dressing room talk at half time. So I give Cork every chance. Why? Because of their speed, because of the work rate of their forwards, and also, listen, they're getting goals, Mick. And where they will fall down, Cork, in my view, is that if they don't attack them. So if they try, and the way Limerick, they kind of play with, and most teams playing Limerick play with 4 or 5 forwards. I think to beat that Limerick team, you have to play with 6 forwards because they're too comfortable on the ball. If a back line gets a ball, Mick, and you have good work rate, you'll take it back off them. But Limerick are so physically strong, they're able to ride out these tackles, and it makes them much more difficult to dispossess.
Right. Okay. So giving Cork every chance, is that a
I'm giving Cork every chance, but I'm going with Limerick. I think they deserve. Yeah, no, I think they deserve that respect. No, I'm going for Limerick. You know, they're going for their second All-Ireland in a row. They've won 3 Munsters in a row, over third All-Ireland in 4 years, on the back of winning an All-Ireland for the first time 2018 since 1973. I just think their mindset, their mentality, they don't give me any reason to doubt them. And a different guy steps up every time. And usually we'll see on Sunday evening, it's usually because nobody can stop Tom Morrissey, Keane Lynch, or Garrod Hegarty. Now, I know Kyle Hayes used to be up there. That half hour line for Limerick is so crucial. They're the guys, you know, as Cyril Farrell used to say, the conductors of the orchestra. They're the guys who come with the ball and either put it over the bar or give lovely balls into the full forward line. So I think usually one of them will show up and give a man of the match performance. So I'm going to go with Limerick based on just everything.
Okay, well, we can't wait for it. Tommy Walsh, thanks a million for and enjoy the 2 games at the weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, Mick. Thank you.
The great Tommy Walsh there speaking to me. Yes, don't forget to watch the Electric Ireland Minor Hurling Final on Saturday night on TG Carter. Should be a great one. A great Cork team, really exciting, as Tommy talked about there, against the Galway team looking for 5 in a row, which is an unbelievable achievement for the county themselves. John Mullane and Shane McGrath are still with me here. Lads, there's a lot to get through in what Tommy was saying there, but one of the things, Shane, that he really focused on was the work rate of Cork improving this year. How much of a factor has that been? It's actually something that I've seen a few times this week, in that, like, they seemed like they were off the pace maybe for the last couple of years, but the hurlers were there, and it might have just taken this mindset change.
Yeah, I suppose it was always kind of a case with Cork that if you kind of shoved it up to them, maybe that they might fall off, Mick, you know, and that if you go into a shootout with them, you'd be risking it. Whereas now, you know, I suppose what we're trying to say is like that their forwards might be always good enough to score you 27, 28, nearly hit that 30-point mark, but that the backs would let them down. And for me, the thing is almost switched around now, in that their backs are playing phenomenal. Like, you know, their backs they have that steel, you know, they're able to read the game well. They're very comfortable on the ball. Like, I mean, you take their full back line, you take Niall O'Leary and Sean O'Donoghue, two guys who will probably, you know, be in line for All-Star nominations anyway. I think Sean O'Donoghue will be very, very close to getting it. But I think the number 3 thing has been pivotal, like, in that, you know, with all the due respect to Damien Cahalane and all the wonderful things he's done, and, you know, he heart on the sleeve hurler guy for Cork and loves hurling for Cork and will do whatever it takes. I think Robert Downey has been just massive. Like, he's just been so central to their success, in that he's played so well. And, you know, even the day I was on duty there inside the Gaelic grounds the night they played Clare, I just thought he was phenomenal, like, you know, and I think he's built on it since. And where he had a hard time maybe against Billy Ryan for a lot of the game the last day, he just grew into the game, and that will do his confidence the world of good. You know, Tim O'Mahony's real tough, tenacious defender at wing back. And Mark Coleman is obviously, you know, their ball player and is very comfortable on the ball. You know, they're very, like, you know, Barcelona-esque the way they spray it around the back. I think the big thing for Cork, with all those guys mentioned aside, is that is Jeremy Millerick going to play? And we're hearing that he probably won't play with the hamstring injury that he has. So I think he's a massive loss. I think he can do, as we spoke about, Brendan Maher role. He can be a man marker, but, you know, he does everything for the team. He's a massive team player. He doesn't mind not getting on the score sheet or all the plaudits. And I think he is a massive loss, because I actually thought, lads, he did a good enough job he was named midfield the last day, but when Keane Lynch came out, I think he picked up Keane. I think you were on duty that night, John, in the stadium. You might have probably seen it better than I would on the telly, but that he picked up Keane and he did a very good job on him. And I think that he's a massive loss for the Cork lads at the weekend, Mick, like, you know, because I think their defence has been really solid, and I think Jeremy Millerick has been one of the linchpins of that, like.
Yeah, and you're talking about Tommy mentioned the half forward line there, as we all know, are the ones that often do a lot of the damage for Limerick. But what about the point about the 6 forwards, John? Because it is one of the criticisms that we would have had of Waterford after the semi-final, was that as much as they went hell for leather and it was brilliant for 15, 20 minutes, they didn't have that firepower because they didn't have enough up there to stop Limerick from collecting the ball and delivering it in. And the way that half back line can be so dominant when they've got time on the ball. Is that the way the Cork have to do it? Is they have to go up and mark the backs almost?
Yeah, but just before we go on to that, right? Just touching on what Shane said there about the Cork backs, right? They've been excellent, but the problem is against Limerick the last day on the Munster semi-final, Callahan had a very good game. Cadigan nullified the influence of Tom Morrissey. Sean O'Donoghue done a man-marking job on who was it? Gillan was excellent on him. And Gerald Melrick, as Shane touched on it there, Gerald Melrick played midfield. At times went back on Keane Lynch. Mark Coleman then would sit in front of the D. If Keane Lynch came out, it was like Mark Coleman would pass him on to Gerald Melrick, and Gerald Melrick would pick up Keane Lynch. Now, right, the dynamics of that backline changes, right? Gerald Melrick is gone. Who's going to do that role for Gerald Melrick? Because is Mark Coleman going to follow Keane Lynch? He'll follow him to a certain area of the field, and then he'll pass him on to someone midfield. So who's that player going to be? Who's going to pick up Keane Lynch when he goes into that middle third area? If Gallan goes full forward, is Sean O'Donoghue going to go in full back, which then pushes Robert Downey out the corner back? That's a bit of a problem. And the likelihood is that he's going to start one of either Cadigan or Damien Callahan, who were very good the last day out. So there's a little bit of juggling around to do in that Cork backline. So they're probably not as settled as they were going into the last Cork game or the last Limerick game in the Munster semi-final. So that is going to be a bit of a headache with the loss of Gerald Melrick and possibly one of Cadigan and Damien Callahan not starting on the bench. Now, to answer your question about the forwards, Waterford probably went the route of, they didn't push up enough. And we've seen it in the second half when Waterford went for it. They pushed Jamie Barron up, they pushed Austin up, and they went mano a mano, like if you want to call it for all the word. Now look, Limerick were down to 14 minutes at that time, but they caused Limerick more problems. Like you seen Sean Finn came under a bit of pressure, Dan Morrissey, and that's Tommy Welch is exactly right. That's exactly what Cork have got to go and do the weekend. They've got to go for it. They've got to push up, 6 forwards, just go on the attack, and take the risks. I think they've got to take a few risks the weekend and hope they get a bit of luck. And I think, from a game's perspective, you're looking at the 4 quarters. Limerick have these 4 quarters off to a tee. I mean, I think Shane, you touched on it. The sooner they get rid of these 4 quarters, the better. I think the biggest beneficiaries of these water breaks have been Limerick. But I think from a Cork point of view, I think, everything has got to run right for them. They've got to get off to a good start. They've got to be in it from the first water break, attack that second water break. And look, there is going to come a time where Limerick are going to get a bit of a purple patch. And, Cork are just going to have to ride it out, try and limit what advantage Limerick get while they go through that purple patch. We've seen it the last day, in that second quarter. Limerick were formidable, and it was effectively the winning of the match. And I think it's crucial for Cork to get in at half time, if there's only a score to win it, and attack that third quarter. And if they're going into that last quarter with the rebel roar behind them, you don't know what way Limerick could react to it,
Yeah, absolutely. And what do they do in with those forwards then, Shane? Like, because there's lots of comments coming in, by the way. Keep them coming. We're putting a lot of them on screen. People can see them. But a big one here from Paul. Like, we don't have too many questions about the Limerick lineup. We've talked about what Cork will do in the backs, but the big one is, does Shane Kingston start? Do they try and hit them from the start, or do you want to keep a lad like that in your pocket the way they did in the semi-final, who can come on and be electric in the last 25 minutes?
Yeah, like I suppose my take on this is, and I've talked about Jim Gavin before, that that a lot of teams now, a lot of the culture is that they don't use the word subs, like, and I'm all for it. Like, you have starters and finishers, and Jim Gavin's theory maybe a lot of the time was that maybe you should finish with your best team rather than starting with your best team. And I think that's what Cork should do. Like, I think Cork should try and finish with their best team. You know, I mean, I agree totally with what John said. They really have to go all out for it. But I suppose the difference between, you know, maybe Waterford not getting the victory or not being closer, in my opinion, was like Waterford gave everything they had against Limerick, and me and John were there and we were watching them, and they come that first water break, they almost looked a little bit tired, like, but they were still down a point, and it was 4 points to 3, and I think Waterford hit 5 wides or something in that period. So what I'm trying to say is that if Cork do go for it and throw everything at it, they have to go in up, or they have to go in, you know, at least level, like, you know, for throwing everything at it, because it's just demoralizing for a team. You throw everything at a team like Limerick and you still can't get ahead of them. So to go back to the Shane Kingston thing, I think for me, I would keep Shane Kingston, and I would try and finish with your best team. You know, I mean, coming into, like we see it in rugby now, come maybe around the 50-minute mark, that all the front row are taking off and you're getting the new guys in and fresh. And we're starting to see it more and more in hurling. I think come minute 46, 47, we're starting to see, you know, subs, 2 or 3 subs from either side coming in. And I think that if you have a Shane Kingston, you know, and you say to the 6 forwards, look, lads, all go out, hurl with freedom, you know, but understand that if it's not happening for you, this guy's coming on, or, you know, Alan Connolly's coming on, or Alan Cadigan's coming on. So I think that, right, it's a pressure you're putting on him, but like it's you know, I think it's a good pressure, and that lads will either accept it or they won't. If they take it on board and it's an All-Ireland final and they play well, happy days. If they don't, okay, let's get Alan Cadigan on, let's get Shane Kingston on, let's get Alan Connolly on, you know what I mean? So I would say finish with your strongest team, Mick, is what I'm trying to say, that the Limerick lads, you know, the Sean Finns of this world might look out and say, right, who's warming up? Shane Kingston. Jeez, I'm only trying to get over, you know, marking Jack O'Connor here, or I'm only trying to get over marking, you know, maybe Robbie O'Flynn or someone's come into me. So I think finish with your best team, keep Shane Kingston in reserve, in my opinion.
I think he had, if he does hold Shane Kingston, he has to start Alan Cadigan. Like, there's no point. Like, I would be a big advocate, hold Shane Kingston, but there's no point holding Shane Kingston, and you know, you could be 7 or 8 points down when he's coming on, and you know we know how good Limerick are when they get ahead of you, and they get that gap of 6-7 points, and they keep you at arm's length. So for me, if he doesn't start Shane Kingston, he has to start Alan Cadigan, and then you can bring on the likes of Barrett. You can bring on Connolly. We've seen it the last day when Barrett came on against Limerick in the Munster semi-final. I think he got 2 or 3 points. It was probably a big ask from the last day, starting him in the All-Ireland semi-final. So I don't think he'll start Barrett. And I don't think he'll start Shane Kingston either. I think they'll hold Shane Kingston, but if Shane Kingston doesn't start, I think they then have to go and put Alan Cadigan in corner forward and go with a full forward line in of Cadigan, Horgan, and Jack O'Connor.
Is there any, this is probably sound mad, but is there any credence in the idea, Shane, of maybe putting one of those scoring fast corner forwards, Cadigan, Kingston, O'Connor, out at 11 and put him on Declan Hannon and try and run at Hannon? And I don't like the fact that Hannon's often seen as a bit of a weak link in the Limerick defence, because it's not fair and it's not true either. But in the style of play of what they have and the role that they want him to play, you have to upset Limerick. You can't let them play in the way they want to, and that might be a way of doing it.
Yeah, like I suppose maybe teams are looking at what joy Tip had maybe in the Munster final, and the joy was when Barry Hogan went route one down the middle and getting that puck out over Declan Hannon, and maybe he wasn't as comfortable going back. But you're not going to puck it down on the two-man mountains either side, and Diarmaid Burns and Kyle Hayes, because, you know, teams know you're not going to get much joy out of that. So if you do put a speedster like Jack O'Connor or someone like that out at 11, you know, you really have to play the ball through the lines, and you know, Cork are good at that. Like, but for me, I wouldn't have Jack O'Connor out there. Like, you know, I'd leave him inside and try and get as much space as you possibly can in front of him. Now, Burns, Hannon and Hayes are going to sit to a degree, but I mean, if they can play through the lines, and the likes of Robbie O'Flynn and Harnedy maybe start picking off a few points, might force them out a small bit and leave the space inside, you know, for the likes of Jack O'Connor and these guys, you know, because, you know, I suppose Hoggy won't mind what way the ball goes in. You know, he's not dependent on his speed or anything like that. Whereas if you can get 10, 15 yards of space in front of Jack O'Connor, he gets the ball in his hand, see the way he rounded Rory Hayes, see the way he went past Kilkenny lads the last day. You know, I think Croke Park is made for the likes of Jack O'Connor, albeit he was quiet for a lot of the game the last day. But I think the experience he would have got from playing for senior, first big senior game for Cork in Croke Park, I think will be massive, and I think it'll stand him the next day. So for me, I wouldn't be putting Jack O'Connor out there, because I think that Harnedy and Robbie O'Flynn are probably the two guys to try and go toe to toe with Kyle Hayes and Diarmuid Burns. But as you're saying with the Declan Hannon thing, you know, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest, Mick, who the guy is. You know.
But Shane, we're talking about this the last 3-4 years, that, you know, the scores to be got off of Declan Hannon, and, you know, I can't. There's no fella stands out that I can think of that's gone in on Declan Hannon and has got all that space and has picked off 4 or 5 points. It's just not happening. And I think to put Jack O'Connor number 11, he'd get swallowed up in there. Limerick are so good at putting a wall in front of Declan Hannon. It's just ridiculous. I mean, and even last year, I think Waterford tried it at stages of the All-Ireland Final, where they brought Desi Hutchison out at centre forward, and he couldn't get his hand on the ball either. It's easier said than done, and I think even Harnedy is the best bet to go in at number 11 on Declan Hannon. I think Harnedy got a bit of joy off him in the first half of that Munster semi-final, but putting a fast, speedy fella in at number 11, it's I don't think it's the answer. I think he'll just get swallowed up.
That's me told so, lads. I bow to your superior knowledge. But what do we're talking all the show, and it's natural for the underdogs that we're talking. What do Cork have to do against Limerick? But we should also think that, like, Cork have their own dangers. Have they scored? I think it's like we're talking about Jack O'Connor playing inside. I think they've scored 26 goals so far this season, league and championship, something like that. Anyway, Shane will probably have the exact number, but it's unbelievable how many goals they're scoring, and it is. Like, is that Limerick's sole focus nearly this week, John, is to say, you know, we're not letting any goals in. They didn't concede a goal in the All-Ireland Final last year. You know, maybe that's what they have. Like, if they can hold Cork goalless or to even one, you know, they're probably going to win this game.
Yeah, 100%. And what John Kiley and Connacht will be banging the drum, they'll be saying, lads, if we can raise, don't mind Cork raising green flags, if we can raise 1 or 2 goals and even 3 goals, I mean, then the task for Cork becomes a greater task. But I think if Cork are to win this game, I think they're going to have to raise 2, possibly 3 green flags the weekend, and possibly 20, 21, 22 points if they are to raise those green flags. They presented themselves in the league meeting at the Gaelic grounds. They scored 2 goals. They possibly could have had another 4 goals that day in the league meeting on the Gaelic grounds. The last day out, you know, they had the opportunities. They got a great goal. Shane Kingston got a great goal. They had the penalty miss as well. They probably 1 or 2 other opportunities then in the second half if they would have taken a little bit more out of it. Passed off the ball, they could have been in for goal. But from a Limerick point of view, I just think they will be eager, and I think John Kiley, Connacht, they will be banging the drum. We keep it tight at the back. You know, we don't leave them in for goals. And if Limerick do that, and if they keep Cork to possibly 1 goal, I think it's going to be a very, 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 very tall order for Cork to win this match.
We have a poll running on our YouTube channel all the way through the show of who's going to win. 55% say Cork, which might have more to do with the fact that there's more people in Cork than there is in Limerick. I'm not sure, but if it's to put the prediction time, lads, we're out of time. Shane, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I agree with what John was saying earlier on. I just think Limerick they're the real deal. I think there's a lot of questions have been asked of them over the last few years, and the only time that they maybe failed to answer them was for a period against Kilkenny in 2019. I think other than that, they've answered all questions asked on days when the pressure was the highest, days when they were expected to win. They always did win. And I just think that they're a Croke Park team as well, I'll put it like that. And there's one player in particular who epitomises that for me is Tom Morrissey. Wasn't having the best year for Limerick, maybe Munster Championship terms, just couldn't find his feet, and for this high standards he has set, and in the last day scores 5 points for play. Their half forward line scored 9 points for play. So we could keep going on about him, but I just feel the Peter Casey thing has worked out for him. I think that's massive for him as well, and probably rightly so. He's back. He's hurling some stuff for him, hurling the best stuff he has, and he's been awarded with a starting place. That's a massive boost for him. And I just think when it comes to the big day in Croke Park for the last few years, I think Limerick have had the answers all the time. Like Cork will it'll be a great game, and it'll be a more exciting final because Cork are in it. But all said and done, and looking at the Limerick team here, I have the programme from the last day, and I'm just looking at Sean Finn, Dan Morrissey, Diarmaid Burns, Kyle Hayes, William O'Donoghue, Gerard Hegarty, Keane Lynch, Tom Morrissey, Gillan, Flanagan, Casey. There's all guys who potentially could get All-Stars this year. So I just think for that reason, I think they're an awesome team with awesome guys in the bench, with an awesome management. And I just think that they will win it by 2-3 points. Yeah,
you wouldn't be surprised for any of those names that you named there to win man of the match on Sunday. John, who are you going for?
Yeah, I'm gonna argue the case for Cork. Now look, we'll go back to 2018. That epic game down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh the year. Limerick, made the breakthrough. It was a draw. Limerick were down to 14 men. Then we went to the All-Ireland semi-final. Cork were 6 points up. Should have closed out the game. Should have won that match. The following year, then 2019. They went up to the Gaelic grounds. Nobody was giving Cork an opportunity that day, and Cork do what Cork do best. They go and they come with the answers, and they beat Limerick. Then last year they didn't meet, and in a couple of league meetings, there's been a lot of high-scoring games. There's possibly only 2 or 3 points in it. Take away the league meeting up in the Gaelic grounds, I wouldn't read anything into that match. So I think Cork, they've tradition behind them, as we touched on earlier, after winning the under-20s. I think their minors have a great chance the weekend. And I think their supporters are going to be going up believing, you know what, hey, we're Cork. We are the People's Republic. We're going to win this match. We've X amount of All-Irelands. Limerick have X amount of All-Irelands. They just, Cork on All-Ireland final day, you think of the calibre of players that have to win an All-Irelands. They'll go up believing they're going to win. The players will go up believing. The supporters will go up believing. I think that has to stand for something on All-Ireland final day. And I think they're the best equipped team to possibly take down this Limerick team. I think Limerick, of all the teams they've come up against, I think they'll fear Cork the most. I think they'll have it in the back of their minds that, this is a very, very good Cork team. But in saying all that, I just can't, Shane just named off all those names there. Sean Finn, Kyle Hayes, Keane Lynch, Rolls Royce of a player. You have that warlord in the middle of the park, O'Donoghue. For me, he's probably my favourite player out of this Limerick team. And I think Cork will stay with him till they'll be in it at half time. And I just think that third quarter, I just think the physical presence of this Limerick team, I think they'll wear Cork down like they've done all the other teams. I think if the weather is going to play a big part, could possibly play a big part the weekend. They could possibly give in showers, rain. I think that'll suit only one team, and that's going to be Limerick. And I just think, all in all, I just think this Limerick team, they're a joy to behold. 3 All-Irelands in 4 years they're chasing. Could possibly be going for 4 in a row. But I think they're going for back-to-back. Cork's time is coming, but I think they're possibly going to have to wait maybe next year or the year after. I would love to see Patrick Corrigan climb the steps of the Hogan stand like us all, win that elusive All-Ireland medal. But I just can't. I just think it's Limerick's to lose. I think if Limerick perform, they'll win the match. If Limerick don't perform and Cork come at a performance, Cork could possibly win it, but it's Limerick for me.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask about the whole Corkness thing because we're talking about the in-depth analysis of the match, but it's what's in my head more than anything else going into this, because it's why you can never write them off like it is a real thing. But that's funny because we've had 2 pundit chain now between Tommy and John who've given all the cases for Cork, but ultimately gone for Limerick. At least you put it on the line as Limerick all the way.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, sure, look, I tell you, as I said, we're very close to the border here, and they're hard to listen to sometimes. But sure, look, I mean, if we had a county colours day in the school, there's 3 or 4 kids in my class, and their jerseys they're wearing are Limerick. So, you know, it's not because we're living close to them or anything like that. But I just know I see these players, see the group that they have at the moment, and I think Tong and the Limerick people around here, and even down in Newport and stuff, that have a good few people would shout for Limerick, and I think they all realise, a lot of Limerick people realise they love this group. They'll go and watch them anywhere. If they were playing a match above the North Pole, they'd nearly chance to try and run a bus up to it to see them, because they're going to try and cherish every moment that they have with this group. And I think they're dead right too, because they mightn't see him again for a long time, and for that reason I think they are a serious team. Like,
yeah, they could be one of those once in a lifetime for the county anyway. But listen, Shane McGrath, John Mullane, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been brilliant talking to you both, and to Tommy Walsh earlier on as well. Enjoy the game on Sunday, lads. I know we'll be talking to you from Croke Park afterwards, Shane, so people can tune in for that. But both of you can be heard on RT radio for the game. So enjoy it. It's going to be a cracker. And thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, Mick. Thanks.
Great stuff there from John and from Shane, and thanks a million for watching as well. Hope you enjoy both All-Ireland finals this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. Enjoy.